It is the biggest city in Saskatchewan. It's located on a beautiful river, has a rich arts and culture scene, and attracts people from all over the world. Saskatoon, like all major cities in Canada, is trying to figure out how its infrastructure needs will keep up with its growth. And like so many other major cities, it's also struggling with how to deal with mental health, addictions, and a homelessness crisis. Our guest today, it's her job to balance all of it, to help Saskatoon be a safe, attractive, and vibrant place to live, work, and play, while also taking care of the needs of the city's most vulnerable. Cynthia Block was a city councillor before she was elected as mayor in Saskatoon last November. She's been in that job for almost a year, and she'll be our guest for the entirety of the show today. If you have questions for Mayor Block, you can call 1-800-716-2221 or email bluesky@cbc.ca. It is a busy day for Mayor Block. Saskatoon city budget comes out later today, and it's a tough one. As far back as June, there was talk that property taxes could go up as much as 10% to pay for all the expenses. We are grateful that she's found some time for us today. Welcome to Blue Sky, Mayor Block.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, before we get into taxes, before we get into the backstory, I want to start with something news related because you're seeing some snow in Saskatoon today. And I understand that there was a meeting last night to talk about a warming center. Can you tell me what is happening with this warming center? What is going on?
So it has been a struggle to try to find a location for the warming centers for this winter. We have been working collaboratively with the province for many months now. They have made a commitment of $3 million to ensure that we have 24/7, 365 days a year opportunities for places for people to be as we sort through the wider goal to make sure that everyone has a home. But right now, we have a temporary situation for the winter that requires a different lens. And we've been frustrated by this as a city, I think, for a very long time. And the city made the decision to purchase a property in the Riversdale neighborhood in order to ensure that we have more control over making sure that there is that space available. And it was only recently purchased, and there needs to be some repairs and serious infrastructure pieces just to make sure that it can be utilized for the purpose with which we have intended. But in the meantime, where will people go? And the province has worked really hard to find that spot, but they were at the last minute unable to secure the format or the facility that they had planned. And so that put us in a very awkward situation yesterday, where we had to hold an emergency council meeting and on the 5th of November to try to figure out now what. And that was difficult, right? Because we had hoped that we were going to be more proactive this year, and council was clearly frustrated that we were not able to have a smooth start to the winter season in Saskatoon. But we have agreed that we will be opening up the old bus depot downtown, and that will serve as the warming center for women and for men. And it will be operated by the Saskatoon Tribal Council.
So it will be available for men and women, not just for women?
That's correct. That the intention of the operator, STC, is that they would operate together once they are in their more permanent home on Avenue C in the city-owned facility. When that's ready, which should be ready by the end of this month, the men and women will be separated. There's an opportunity, the way the space is laid out, to keep them separate, and that will be the intention for the overnight part of the drop-in. A reminder: the drop-in is designed to be 24/7, so that there's always a place for vulnerable people to have access to be warm, and that it's the overnight option that we are cautious that it works best when men and women are separated.
We've been very fortunate that it hasn't been a cold September, October, and not seeing snow until now, because I imagine that would have made this even more difficult to figure out. Is the intention to have these kinds of services spread out or in a more concentrated area for people?
That is that is a really tough conversation in community. I think that I, at one point, was very much of the opinion that we should be having, smaller group home-like facilities all across the city, and that we would all share in the responsibility to help vulnerable people. But what I am learning, speaking to service providers and people who are unhoused themselves, is that there is an area where they are, and it is inclusive of all of the services that they want to access. The Friendship Inn, the food bank, Station 20, there's the medical facilities through St. Paul's and the Westside Medical Clinic and Prairie Harm Reduction. All of those are, along 20th Street in that area. Comfy is in that area. It's the Central Urban Métis organization. They do a terrific job in terms of providing a beautiful outdoor drop-in opportunity with showers and washrooms throughout the summer months. That was a huge win, I think, for the city and for people who were vulnerable, in that they had a really wonderful place to be. So I think that what we're coming to understand is that people who are vulnerable are generally the most comfortable being in the area where they can access those services. And I know that we have people aren't housed in every single part of Saskatoon, but this is the general area where people are. And if we don't meet them where they're at, the idea that somehow we can just build something on the outsides of the city, for example, and think that that's what they're going to try to access and that's where they will want to be, it seems increasingly that is just not possible.
What message do you have to people who say that that they're not interested in this, that this is creating more problems by having all of these services in one area?
I wish I had a magic wand to make that better. And I think we have to keep listening to the business community and to residents in the area about how do we figure out the best way to support people who are unhoused and also all of their neighbors. I continue to believe that there are ways to do that as long as the province and the city and the federal government are working together toward the common goal to ensure that everyone has a safe place to call home. That what we are in is in a transition, and as hard as it is to continue to see the numbers of people who are unhoused go up, if we are going to get to the other side of this, we have to put these temporary measures in place. They have to be more predictable and responsive, as we are also steely focused on making sure that we are building housing as quickly as possible that is appropriate for people who are unhoused. Not every unhoused person is facing the same challenges. Some people will have mental health and addiction issues, and they might need one type of service in terms of rehabilitation or detox, but there are others for whom poverty is the main issue. And what we need is to get them their access to services as well. And there are all kinds of ways to do this with housing that has wraparound supports. And Saskatoon accepted the Housing Accelerator Fund, which is a flow-through from the federal government that is producing in our city 757 new units. And that will take some time to get all of those units up and running. 70% of them have wraparound supports. This gives me a lot of optimism as the mayor of Saskatoon. But I know that right now we all need to roll up our sleeves and figure out how can we support one another through it.
I want to bring up something that you did. I was going to talk about this later in the show, but it kind of flows into what we're talking about. You took part in the Sanctum Challenge, which is where community leaders challenge themselves to spend 36 hours immersed in carefully designed scenarios created by those with lived experience with homelessness and frontline workers. And I want to play some of a video that you recorded during that challenge. Let's have a listen.
Hey, Saskatoon. We've been on the streets now for almost 14 hours. It's more than 14 hours. And we'll be sleeping outside tonight. There's no room at the shelters. And it's been a long day. I can't believe how hard it is just to figure out where to eat, where to use the washroom, where to get an application to get income support or get connected to services for women who are pregnant. I am playing a character. It's not a character. It's actually somebody in Saskatoon who has lived this life. And it is her experience that I'm experiencing right now. And it's hard to imagine that people do this day in and day out. You walk and you walk and you walk and you walk. And then you walk some more. And at the end of the day, you fall asleep somewhere. And then you get up and do the whole thing all over again. This is why we do it. To remind ourselves that we can do better. And we must. Good night.
You can hear the emotion in your voice there. How do you carry that experience with you now as you're having conversations with counselors, with community members, with residents who feel strongly one way or another? How do you carry that, and how does it inform the decisions you make now?
I think that experience taught me something really important about the landscape of how people access services. I've, made it my job for the last almost a decade to connect with people who are unhoused, to talk to service providers, and to otherwise understand the lay of the land in our city, because people who are unhoused live in every neighborhood, and it doesn't matter what ward you represent. And of course, now as mayor, that it's the whole city. But I was surprised at just how hard it is to walk and walk and walk and walk and walk because you need to use the washroom. And then, okay, now you're hungry. Guess what? You might not get access to food at that location. So now you can walk, I don't know, another 16 blocks before you actually can find a place before you can be fed. And I can't say enough about the service providers. They are honestly amazing. And, for all of the struggles that we face, there are such amazing organizations and caring people that are turning up day in and day out to support people who are vulnerable. And for the many challenges that people who are unhoused face, I can say that I've learned that there's enough supports in that area that people don't have to go hungry. That piece, I feel like food security, that's not really food security, but if you need to eat, there are many great opportunities to get to be well fed, actually, through especially the Friendship Inn and access to the food bank. And pretty much every place I went as somebody who was unhoused for 36 hours, there were snacks, there were people that wanted to help. That part was great, but just to be able to get to those places when you also have to get an application, and maybe you don't have ID, and maybe you need to go for a medical appointment. I was representing someone who was unhoused who was pregnant and had an addiction issue, and was trying to figure out how to get well so that I could not only keep my child, but also get back my children who had been apprehended by the system. And so there was a lot going on there, and to realize that those access to services take an extraordinary amount of time and energy just to do those very, very basic things. So I think as a city, there's a few things that I think we can do, and the very first one is. I'm sorry, I'm kind of blanking out here for some reason. But there were, to know that you have to go through all of those pieces in order to get access to services, I think foundationally helped me understand how important a hub model is. And for those that don't know what that is, it's a navigation system where it's a one-stop place to go. And our city has been talking about that for quite some time, and council has actually gotten quite far along in the approval process to at least get reporting back on understanding what options for a hub model would look like. And I am in conversations with the provincial government about, how we could have a successful model. I believe Yorkton is operating something similar. But whether it was my experience or because of that, I took the opportunity to ask every unhoused person I could and every service provider, what would it mean if we could have a one-stop shop for people to get access to the services they need? And everyone, without question, said it was the single most important thing we could do. And I would say the second thing that kind of surprised me was that why don't why don't we offer free transit for people who are vulnerable? And how could we do that in a respectful, dignified way? And we happen to be undergoing a fare review for transit right now, and so this is our opportunity to get some reporting back on that, to be able to support that process. And of course, we know that housing is the absolute most important thing before we're ever going to get to a better place in our city. But I think that the one other really important piece that I learned in this journey was that there is a unique vulnerability for women who are unhoused at night. And if there is a conversation about whether or not we need 24/7 in the summertime, I'm going to be advocating as much as I possibly can that there will be an option for women.
Thank you for that very, very thoughtful answer. I want to go to the phones because we do want people to ask you questions if they have them, and we're appreciative that you're willing to take questions. The number to call, 1-800-716-2221, or email us, bluesky@cbc.ca, if you have questions or comments for Saskatoon Mayor Cynthia Block. Stuart is on the line in Saskatoon. Stuart, go ahead.
Yes, I've heard for the last 10 years or so that Saskatoon has a homeless problem, but the city council and the administration, time after time, has proven it's not a Saskatoon problem, it's a West Side problem. Every facility is on the West Side, even though there's homeless people around the Markham Mall area is causing problems for the apartments in that area. There's nothing on the East Side. Everything's on the West Side. The new hub they're talking about, city administration, says they're going to put it down around Avenue B to Avenue P to 19th Street to 22nd Street, another facility down there. Everything's concentrated on the West Side, and I believe that we need more shelters, but we should have some on the other side of the city. I understand the majority of the people that are homeless live on this side of the city, but there are people on the other side.
Stuart, thanks for that. Mayor Block, I'll let you respond.
Yeah, Stuart, that is part of the challenge that we face, is to try to figure out how to take scarce resources and support vulnerable people. I hope that by offering some ability for having free transit, that the folks can get easier access. As for the hub, we don't know where that's going to go. We have not discussed that formally at council at all yet. But we do have a challenge in that we already have a corridor that exists. And if you think about it, Stuart, it really is, it's happened organically. It's not anything that the city decided. And many of those organizations have no direct connection to the city other than, we support as we can. But whether it's the Friendship Inn or the Food Bank or the West Side Clinic or St. Paul's Hospital or Prairie Harm Reduction, these are not city facilities and they were not coordinated by the city. And it has just happened organically in our city that this is the area where the services are. And so what should we do? Should we start to try to do this in many areas of our city? And would the province be willing to support that if we are looking at a hub model in several areas, or to create sheltering in many areas of the city? Is that a good use of resources? Is that actually overall even work, depending on where the unhoused choose to be? That's been a really strong message to me by a lot of the service providers, is that people who are unhoused have community, and I it's not lost on me, Stuart, that exists on the east side as well, and that they choose to stay on the east side, but I don't know that we have the resources to be able to create what currently exists in Riversdale and Pleasant Hill in another area of the city. But I continue to want to listen and to figure out if there's a better way to do this. And perhaps if we could all just realize that if we roll up our sleeves and work toward housing for everyone, that this will simply allow good quality of life and it won't be an east versus west side conversation anymore, because we will make sure that people are safely housed.
I'm Sam McKeag. Today we are in conversation with Saskatoon Mayor Cynthia Block. This week we have been focusing on the needs of cities, towns, villages, and municipalities in a time where everything costs more and they have to find a way to pay for it. Mayor Block, thanks so much for making time for us on I know what will be a very busy day for you.
I'm happy to be here.
Okay, before we get into the nitty gritty, because I want to dive into taxes and the budget, and I know that that's going to come out. Why did you want to be mayor? What's different from being mayor versus council? I'm so
just
curious.
That little easy answer.
Yeah,
right?
well, I'm just curious.
Gotcha.
You're a year in now, so I'm wondering if it's what you expected, and if it is what you'd kind of hoped it would be versus being a city councillor.
That's kind of a long answer. If you want to hear it, I'll try to make it as brief as I can.
Give me a Reader's Digest version.
I will try my best. So I never knew I wanted to be mayor, and I certainly didn't intend to be until the pressure started mounting on me. I guess now it's 2 years ago, about the time Charlie Clark announced that he had no intention of running again. The pressure started to build on the folks that were asking me to run, and they were pushing me pretty hard on. And I think that what was maybe helpful was that it wasn't just, from one group of people. They were from many groups of people. And I think that I was really scared to accept the job, and also, I guess, in the end, really scared not to. Because it matters to me that we are moving our city forward, not backward, that we are building a city for all people, that we are, I guess otherwise, trying to be as transparent and honest and accountable with residents about where we're at. I see too many cities across the country that are, choosing to artificially keep taxes low, and then, their asset management falls behind. Their roads are worse, and every year everything costs more. And so what all you're doing is putting that on some other council or another entire generation, or otherwise, you have all sorts of things happen that are unintended consequences of not being straightforward and honest about what things cost, and still trying your best to keep those costs as affordable as possible. That
was a good answer. Not as long as I was expecting it to be.
Well, I kind of had actually a backstory about when I was a kid, but I'll save that for another time.
Okay. Talking about times when everything costs more, I know nothing about the budget. I haven't been part of any of the discussions around it, so just know when I ask questions that this is coming from a genuine, have not seen it yet perspective. What can you tell us about the budget that's coming out today? Because there is that fear that the increase could be 10%, and that's a real fear for people.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fear for all of us. I think that, 10% is unacceptable, and we know that. But what does that mean exactly? And we have been pushing our administration really hard. And one of the biggest impacts to our budget, in addition to the normal things, like, I'm not kidding, like a fire engine used to be $800,000, now it's way over $2 million. And the same kinds of things are happening, whether it's a bus or a police vehicle. It's just, how do you not get those important pieces in place to support your community? You have to do them. But one of the biggest impacts is from police, and it had to do with an arbitration ruling, and that alone has impacted, for 2026, 4% is just for police. So of that 10, 4, the projected property tax increase would have been 6 if it wouldn't have been for that large amount of additional money needed for police. But the police and our administration have been working really hard to try to bring these numbers down. And I anticipate when this goes live later today that we will see a decrease, but it will still be totally unsatisfactory to any of us. And what does that mean exactly? Because it's council's role to now look at the hard work and the pencil sharpening that has been happening in every single department and ask ourselves, is there still room to cut without impacting the services we know residents expect us to meet? And those are never easy questions at council. I can tell you that it has always been my view to look at to take the long view. I worry that if we make short-term decisions that seem like a good idea in the moment, that it's going to cost us more in the long run. And I'm not prepared to do that. I absolutely want to see our city be as lean as possible and to otherwise be very mindful of the affordability crisis that so many residents are facing right now, but to also be honest and transparent about what things cost.
Let's talk about that police budget. Can you refresh memories for people who don't know what you're talking about? Why? So police were asking for $12.2 million more, 3.7% increase. They want even more next year. What is happening with police? Why are they asking for so much money?
Again, it all has to do with that arbitration ruling. I mean, there's other reasons that police budgets are going up, and we, briefly have spoken about that in terms of the costs of vehicles, but also the costs of equipment, and those costs are very high. But the overall numbers for the 2 years, I'm just double checking my notes here. Policing remains one of the largest parts of the budget. I believe it's approaching 25% of our budget. 25 cents out of every dollar is going to policing. And to put that in some context, it's about 10 cents for fire. It's a big amount, and we are becoming a larger city that requires those resources. And we know it's important that we are maintaining the services that our residents expect around community safety. And so the increase I believe is. I'm just double checking. I can't find my police numbers. I apologize.
That's
I should
okay.
have them not right in front of me, but you're right. It was a big amount.
$12.2 million, and then even more next year, bringing the total in 2027 to $150 million.
Yeah, and those are going to hurt. And so I know, I sit on the Board of Police Commissioners, and they have brought those numbers down. But is that going to be sufficient enough for that to have a major impact on those overall projections for property tax increase? It's not, at least not at this point. But perhaps that combined with a lot of other pencil sharpening, we will have I am confident that we will have numbers to begin with our budgeting season that are at least somewhat reduced from what we had seen in June.
Is that feasible? The reason I ask is because that is this year and next year, but Saskatoon continues to grow. Things continue to get more expensive. So if you start increasing that amount now, knowing that they're going to probably ask for more down the road, what is your option?
Policing is a pretty important part of anybody's budget, and it costs money to ensure that we have the kinds of dedicated and talented police that we have in Saskatoon. And this is really the larger topic, Sam, is that we live in a time where municipalities are on the front lines of so many things, including this affordability crisis. And we do not have all of the tools to solve it alone in a reasonable way. Mm-hmm. And I've been feeling this for 10 years, that, this whole system of property tax was designed in the horse and buggy era. Mm-hmm. And all cities across Canada are leaning in hard on the federal government, asking for a new fiscal framework. Because when the economy does well, other orders of government, like the province and the federal government, get more money. Guess what? Municipalities don't. And we continue to try to do city building and maintaining services by doing more with less year after year after year. And Saskatoon right now is down nearly 10% over the last decade per capita, adjusted for inflation. So residents per capita are paying 10% less when you adjust for inflation than they were a decade ago. That is not the case with any other order of government. And so what do you do when you continually do more with less? At some point, you're going to have to do less with less. And we are starting to face that critical juncture. If we are able to take more and more money out of a budget that's trying to be as lean as possible, when does that start to impact the services that we expect? And we just can't have it both ways. And I really, urge residents to lean in with us and understand that, your municipality is trying its hardest to deliver a budget that you expect and to maintain services. And as we face those kinds of challenges that I've explained, how can we advocate together, or how can we figure this out together so that we can continue to have a good quality of life in our city?
We've talked to a number of small towns this week and other communities focusing on how the heck do we pay for all these things. A lot of that comes off of what's going on in Duck Lake and their potential naming rights for the right price. But cities like Regina and Saskatoon, I don't know that you can lean into fundraising in the same way that smaller communities do. And it puts you in almost a strange position in that you're not going to have a bake sale or have people go door to door or sell, raffle tickets to raise money to build a new water treatment plant or to help pay for a new library. How does being in a big city present a unique challenge versus being in some of the smaller municipalities?
I guess I'd say, Sam, that, in the ways that you've mentioned, it's a disadvantage, but in many ways it can be an advantage because as we are building Saskatoon, we are realizing that by having the amenities and, decent roads and all of those pieces are an attraction, and that attracts more residents. And while residential development is not a money winner for a city, it does also invite commercial growth, and that does help our city's overall budgets. And so I will continue to advocate for the things that I know residents and businesses alike care about, so that we can grow a city that is attractive both for visitors and for people who wish to live and call Saskatoon home.
You touched on transit a little earlier, on potentially maybe opening that up for people who are vulnerable and need transportation, particularly if you move to maybe a hub model or have shelters in different parts of the city, so they're not walking 32 blocks to find a meal. There's also an option being considered to spend $1.6 million on 9 transit officers. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? I know we've heard about a number of incidents on transit in Saskatoon, and that it's become, I don't want to call it a dangerous place, but it's become an interesting space.
Yeah, community safety just generally has been a pretty big topic at City Council this month. And, well, to be honest, it has been for quite a long time. But I feel like we're actually starting to move in a direction that could be very helpful. For transit specifically, they have been asking for a long time to have more, stronger enforcement. The fire support officers do exceptionally good work to de-escalate and otherwise keep the peace on transit. But in those situations where it's starting to escalate, that isn't always the right appropriate resource. These are not armed service members. And it is increasingly looking like that needs to be part of the mix of how Saskatoon Transit operates. And we talked about that actually just yesterday in committee. And this will go to budget, and it will be an additional ask at budget. But if we are going to make sure that people are safe on buses and that there is a perception of safety in transit, especially as we are moving toward a new modern public transportation system with the Link, which is bus rapid transit, I think we need to make an investment that attracts more riders. And how do we attract more riders? It must be safe, and it must be perceived to be safe. So we'll see what council decides, but that will go to budget. But I'd like to mention just one other thing on the public safety piece. We are, there's obviously a connection between people who are unhoused and community safety, and the most vulnerable will be the people who are unhoused. But what we are learning is that when we have community safety that is Indigenous led, there's so much more success in terms of helping people get access to services. And that was an example in a pilot project that was a partnership with Saskatoon Tribal Council, the province, and the city of Saskatoon at the Central Urban Métis spot on Avenue M in Saskatoon. And 4 peacekeepers, so Indigenous-led peacekeepers, were in charge of, keeping the peace and also getting people connected to the services that they need. And it was such a remarkable success. It was everything was so much more calm and there was no vandalism. All of those have helped us understand as a city how important it is that we explore this further. And that is another option that is going to go to budget, which would be inclusive of adding peacekeepers, Indigenous-led peacekeepers as a pilot project in our business improvement districts. We don't know exactly where yet, and there's a lot of things to be worked out, especially if it's going to be a pilot project. But I think this is a terrific step forward to work in partnership with Indigenous leadership and really help to move our city forward to make it safe for everyone.
We have an email here from Lillian. It says, I'm having troubles with sidewalk curbs where wheelchair curbs are inadequate, in bad repair. It's difficult to maneuver on and off curbs, and I feel it is so risky. Sometimes it's safer to back off, and I wonder if the city plans to improve the situation.
This year, we are spending more money on sidewalk renewal than ever before. But absolutely, we have areas of our city that still have not had that treatment done. And so I'm not sure, Lillian, what area of the city you're in, but please know that your street is on a list. And if you call City Hall, I'm sure someone can help you understand where it is. And also, please report it. If you notice that something is in bad repair, our staff are obligated to make sure that we have safety on our sidewalks. So please make sure you take that opportunity if you can. We also have we just actually received this week an accessibility report and some specific asks about how we can improve the many ways that we need to do better in accessibility. And some of that is how we move around, but a lot of that is also access to civic buildings and what we're doing to make sure that those are fully accessible. So we will continue to move in that direction.
I want to talk to you about the downtown entertainment district, because it is something that has been on the minds of council and people in Saskatoon for a long time. There was, talk of a soccer center and replacing Credit Union. It's not even Sasktel Center. I've lived in Saskatchewan a long time when I can call it Credit Union Center and Sask Place and all of the things that it's been. But moving some of these things into downtown, where is the event district at?
So we actually had Oakview Group in City Chambers last week. Was it last week? Yes, at City Council proper last week. And it was our very first opportunity to talk to them. And they are the proposed private partner that would form part of the overall strategy, including the funding strategy of the Downtown Event and Entertainment District. It was an interesting conversation about what they could add and what they could do. They have properties across North America, many in Canada now, and they are, basically advocating for the economies of scale that they can bring to the table to help that district be more successful. And, there's a $15 million upfront part of their proposal. And so council was there to ask a lot of questions about how that partnership might work. And in the end, council decided to defer a decision to the new year. So just so your listeners know, we've spent the better part of the last decade trying to put this idea together, this major intergenerational project to be able to create a space in the center of our downtown that not only brings Sasktel Center downtown with zero property tax impact, by the way, and a new and improved for sure, and modernized and enlarged trade and convention center. And in my view, none of this is nice to have. These are the things that you need if you're going to attract the residential and commercial development that you need to your city and the visitation that you need to your city, how we're going to, potentially, hopefully open up some better airplane routes in our city. All of these are foundational, and this would be a much longer answer. I'm not gonna bore you with those details today, but it matters that people are making those connections, because to me, this is a city building a project that attracts that residential and commercial development, and we need to move forward on it. And we are working collaboratively with other orders of government. At this moment, I don't necessarily see whether or not that new infrastructure announcement by the feds is going to actually give us an opportunity to apply in that way. But we'll continue working with both orders of government. But we believe that a private partner is essential to the model, and it's essential to the city's contribution to the model, that because we do want to put this together without an impact to property tax. And I think we have a great opportunity to do it. And I think that, Oakview Group did a good job representing what they could do for our city. But here, I guess, is the big question that council's wrestling with. Is this the right partner at the right time in our history and in the history of the world right now? Do we have economic headwinds and concerns about tariffs and the relationships with partners around the world? And should we be considering having that partnership with an American-based company at this time? And so council has made the decision to reflect for a while to decide whether or not this is a good decision for our city.
Is there a Canadian option for a partner?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, so that makes it, them or another one. If it's American, and you have to make that decision. It's interesting that is still something that you're thinking about, though, on a municipal level, about the relationship and what's happening with that partnership in the United States. I'm wondering, though, as you mentioned, trade, government, you're on FCM, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, Big City Mayors Conference. You're connected with all of the other mayors. Are the problems Saskatoon is facing, challenges, opportunities, we don't like to call them problems, are they similar to what's going on across the country?
They're unbelievably similar, whether it's the crisis with folks who aren't housed in cities across the country, or the fiscal framework of the difficulty of using property tax as the primary tool to fund cities. Every city is feeling the impacts and are lobbying to have these changed and finding new ways to work with other orders of government so that we can solve these problems that we face. If there's one area where, Saskatoon might not be, we're not Windsor. We don't have a car manufacturing plant, and I think it's in Brantford and Windsor and cities like that. When we get together, Mayor Bashinsky and I are both part of the Big City Mayors Caucus, so we get to hear firsthand from all of those cities about what's impacting them, and they are really feeling it in Ontario with regards to the tariffs, and it's really heart-wrenching to hear 3,000 manufacturing jobs, have just recently left or announced that they're leaving Brantford. That's a big loss for a community.
With jobs in that way in Ontario, the housing market in Ontario is still absolutely bonkers. The cost of living to buy a home in Ontario is so different from the cost of living in Saskatoon, Regina, and then particularly in smaller rural communities. But the supply of housing is a big problem in Saskatoon and Regina. We did a whole show on it this summer with realtors. What is your hope and plan for housing in Saskatoon in terms of development?
Yeah, working a lot with the development community and also other orders of government. The federal government obviously has a major plan to build homes as quickly as possible, and we'll be interested to learn more details about that. Grateful that the budget this week helps us understand that our Housing Accelerator Fund is in good stead and will continue to be funded so that we can complete the projects that are already in the pipe, and that's going to be a huge help to get that kind of housing up and running. This past summer, I am, working with the Saskatoon and Builders the Home Builders Association. They've made it really clear that the amount of multi-family buildings that have gone up this past construction season could make a significant difference in terms of rental housing for folks. And if that happens, if we get a lot more rental housing on the market, suddenly that part of the housing continuum starts to shake out a bit and starts to leave more room for others to be able to get into the housing market as well. We still are going to face a very tight challenge on single family homes, and those are usually market demands. So if we start to see like more folks that are getting into rental housing and condos, and that supply is there, now it would seem that the home builders will start to focus on single family dwellings. And, what's the role for the city? Well, we are trying to get more land serviced as quickly as possible to help service that.
Okay, we are coming up on the end of the show. This has been a really good conversation. I've really appreciated your honesty and transparency here. I want to give a last word to you, and in terms of something uplifting. I know political spaces can be challenging. It can be a thankless job because you cannot please everyone and you will not please everyone. But I'm wondering, what is something that you're most looking forward to for your city in the coming year? We're coming up to the end of 2025, which is absolutely bonkers. But what are you most looking forward to in the year ahead?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that I love my job, not to be confused with easy, but that is what I signed up for. It's such an honor, and I love it that I get to live and work in a city of really passionate people that care deeply for their city and for one another. And as we, wrap up the year, and really my first year as mayor, and look ahead, I would like to be able to say that every single day, everyone has a safe place to be and a safe place to sleep, and that we can demonstrate that, like with the numbers, that we are moving forward to making sure people get access to the housing that they need that is appropriate for them. That will lift community safety for everyone, and it will add quality of life for absolutely everyone. And for that reason, I hope that we're all rowing in the same direction. That's probably my biggest hope, is that we are moving together as a city to support the overall goals that are important to every single resident. And I guess I'm hoping that we get some good news about the Downtown Event and Entertainment District and that we start to be able to move forward with that. So those are kind of the three main things.
Mayor Block, thanks so much for all of your time this afternoon. Best of luck with the budget later today.
Thank you.
That was Saskatoon Mayor Cynthia Block.